Are we live? Okay. Nope, I'm unmuted, and we are going to call the meeting to order. It is 7:08, and I thank you for your patience while we set up our technology. How about now? And the aliens are landing. How about now? Try now. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're officially calling the meeting to order. It's 7:09. And again, I thank you for your patience while we got our technology going. And if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is over in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 5th, 2021. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and press. And I do want to just have a quick say thank you to everybody who's attending tonight's meeting. And I want to thank the community members in advance for understanding the abbreviated public portion of our meeting. The board has not met since our July 27th meeting, and we have a very heavy agenda for our executive session. To be mindful of our members' times and allow ample time to conduct the business of the district, we set aside no more than 1 hour for public comment this evening. And Mr. Cruz, would you please do the roll call for attendance?
Yes, thank you. They're all work.
Here.
Mr. Day,
Here.
Mrs. Drappi,
Here.
Mrs. Fresky,
Here.
Mrs. Prisco.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have a few presentations on our agenda tonight. And first up is Mr. Connor O'Brien of Legacy Construction Management, giving a school referendum update.
Mr. Blige, would they be able to hear on the recording for tomorrow? Okay, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then I would suggest that we just speak loudly and then people can move on forward and then we'll disconnect that speaker if it's an echo and it's a problem for the public.
Good evening.
Just wanted to give an update tonight for the referendum, the HVAC construction in regards to the elementary schools in HBW. What I did is I broke it down by school and by each component of each project. Starting with Brookdale Elementary School, the ventilation is 100% complete within the scope of work. The heating is 100% operable. It's not running right now for obvious reasons of the temperature outside. The AC part of the project is at 55% completion. The project is ongoing and it will continue. And as school starts, we'll shift to second shift and we'll work after hours. The PSE&G upgrades for this portion of project is 100%. There's some inspections, but no actual transformer, but they did come and look at some of the equipment prior to giving us the inspection to pass it. Punch list will start actually Thursday across the district. We're going to do the ventilation and the heating components, and the AC will start as soon as that's finished. Forest is very similar to Brookdale. Ventilation and heating is 100% complete. The PSE&G upgrades, which was put a new transformer in the front of the school, a new pole out in front of the street, and underground wiring, that's 100% complete. The power has been transferred over and the new transformer is being used right now. Punch list, again, will continue on the 2nd. F and Brown, the ventilation and heating is 100%. AC is at 60% completion there. PSE&G upgrades, unfortunately, is only at 75%. We're waiting for PSE&G to give us a schedule as to tie in the power at the street. Once that is done, then the contractor will energize that new transformer in the panel inside. That portion of that upgrade has no tie-in to the ventilation. Currently, that ventilation is running, whether that transformer is powered or not. Lanning Elementary School is further along than the other elementary schools. Ventilation and heating is 100% right now. AC is 75% of the way. They just have to tie into the actual unit vents and commission it with train controls. PSE&G upgrades is 100% completed, and inspections are finalized as well there, and we will continue with the punch list on Thursday. The middle school, ventilation is 100%, heating is also 100%, AC is matching Lanning as far as percentage complete, 75%. The upgrades there was just a transformer swap and new underground that was completed and powered, and everything is finished there. Punch list will be Thursday. And that is just kind of a quick update, so visual, so people can see the percentages. The part of the contract portion of this work was to have the ventilation successfully done by the 31st, which is today, and that has been met and reached. The AC part of the project is further along than we were anticipating in the entirety. We did run into some issues with PSE&G, which I'm sure everyone is aware of, working with the utility company. We've made some strides with them to make sure we got this done in time for what was needed on certain schools. And I'm still hoping that prior to school starting, that F and Brown will be 100% complete. We got some extra work done today, so it doesn't even reflect what was done today, this presentation. And hopefully, like I said, I'll give an update maybe by the end of the week that it's 100% done. Like I said earlier in the presentation, the second shift work will start to coincide with the school hours. There'll be no interruption to any of the projects. If there's something that needs to get done as service, we'll treat that as a service and get anything fixed that is part of the project to make sure the ventilation stays operable. We're doing some air balancing testing that's been ongoing right now. And as of right now, the ventilation is hitting the target of the specifications, which give us the air exchanges between 8 and 10, very similar to the high school. We also have upgraded portions of the control system so that the HVAC technician in the district, he should be able to control everything from a remote, as opposed to going to each school having a different system. All systems will be integrated into one. The high school will have one other program, but he should be able to access it at all times. So the system for the train system, even though it was in the district, it's going to be upgraded to the most upgraded technology out there. So that's where we're at right now with the projects. You will see some containers at the job sites as school's going on. That's just for the storage of material, so the guys can come and access as needed with the material for the AC components. At this point, that's what I have here for the update. Not
Thank
sure
you,
if there's
Mr. O'Connor.
any questions from the
Do any of
from
the
the
board members have any questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, oh, sorry. Thank you.
So, I mean, I hear you saying, like, we're having some issues with PSC&G. What issues are we having? Are they not responding? Are they not keeping up their end of the bargain?
Both of those parts. We put these orders in for this equipment prior to actually the contract even going forward, because it was something we knew from last summer that this was
Right.
going to be needed no matter which way it went. So we put those orders in. PSC&G unfortunately has given us multiple inspectors, multiple engineers involved in this project, whether turnover, people retiring. So it's been very difficult on the communication side. They don't answer phones. They just do email, which we've done a lot with. They're just very tough. They're utility companies. So it's difficult. They don't care about a schedule. If there's a storm that comes through, we get pushed to the bottom, stuff like that. So we've been on top of them to understand the impact that this would have if we didn't fulfill this, because we wouldn't be able to turn on some components. So they've been informed of that and what would happen if we failed, especially at their hand for the ventilation purposes.
And just to add to that, Sarah, that we had our B&G committee meeting, we discussed the fact that PSC&G, they have a process where it's a 3-step process. I think, Connor, you can add to that, but basically you do 1 step and then they leave, and then you have to wait for them to come back for the 2nd step. So the process takes time. They don't do it all at one time, right? So that's
Correct.
the situation when that took place. So.
Yeah, so for example, we had the F and Brown transformer delivered, and throughout this project, we haven't been given a schedule. They show up, whether we're already working in the trench or something, then they just show up and say, we're here, and, move out of our way kind of aspect. So it was tough and challenging for the contractor, but we obviously accommodated because we know if they leave, then it's a problem. But yes, as Jim said, if, today they dropped a transformer, I can't even schedule to power until they come and put the meter in. But the guy was on vacation and I couldn't schedule until he showed up on Tuesday and called him this morning. And he said, yeah, I'll be there. So it's until this morning, we didn't know if we were getting it or we were going to be delayed again. So
It's just like a house where they give you that window from 9 to 5. Oh yeah, we'll be between 9 and 5. And then you got to sit there and wait all day for them to show up, right? So
correct.
when you
So
have a construction
we
crew.
utilize the public as being a school is to try to push them and get the effort done. And they have. It's just been tough on the contractor side to be able to schedule and stuff like that. So, we're 75% of the way done at F and Brown for that. And like I said, I'm hoping by the end of the week, we're 100%. Okay.
Mr. O'Brien, can I just quick add? Just to kind of summarize for everyone that's here.
Sure.
And so the ventilation, complete all schools for
Correct.
school
It's-
opening. And that
it's-
was the goal, was to have ventilation in all the schools running, right? And then the factor is the AC components, getting that ready to go, hopefully sooner than later, depending on PSC&G.
Correct.
I do have to add that working for the town, I can say I'm not in the building department, but I work in the same office as the building department for the Township of Verona. And the town has been very accommodating. Every time you guys call, the inspections are done and everything is moving as fast as it possibly can. So just to, so thank you, but it is moving as fast as it possibly can for everyone out there that is saying that the AC isn't going to be ready to go by school.
Correct.
The
Everyone.
key was to get ventilation going.
Correct. And everyone from the town, from the building department, even the Department of Works and stuff like that has been very accommodating with the police helping us to get the equipment around town and the fire department coming and doing inspections as we need to. Everyone knows that the importance of this to get this done, especially when school's closed, how much easier it is to get inspections done. So the town is, doing partial inspections to make sure that when school opens, we're not trying to inspect the whole school with kids in it, because, then we're talking after hours, and that becomes a headache for, contractors and responsibility and all that. So everyone's been extremely helpful in this project, and everyone's been patient as we've dealt with this.
Thank you so much.
And there definitely was, I mean, you can add to this, you've done a lot of these projects. This was not a simple project. I mean, between the piping, multiple buildings, multiple crews, all doing it at the same time, doing through the summer, starting maybe a little late, and then you have to move the equipment, all those kind of things. So this was a major lift and shift. And at the end of the day, we're so happy to kind of have the ventilation, the AC, hopefully sooner than later, and the heating. So again, looking this long term, this is going to be an amazing thing for our district, but we're close. We're close to getting it done. So I want to thank you and the crew for all your work and effort to get this done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you.
The next presentation that we have is the Verona Board of Education self-evaluation. And we have Ms. Charlene Peterson of the New Jersey School Board Association, who is going to review this with us.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight with the board. I apologize for having my back turned to you. I'm here tonight to talk about the board self-evaluation and to the benefit of the public that are here. New Jersey School Boards has a tool that allows each board member to log on and complete board self-evaluation. And then we compile the results into one anonymous document that would talk about the work of the board. And so that's what I'm here tonight to review with the board, is that board self-evaluation. A board self-evaluation used to be required by the state. It was part of CUSAC, the state monitoring process. And about 5 or 6 years ago, when the state relaxed some requirements, this is one of those requirements that it relaxed. So we say that boards that continue to fill out the board self-evaluation do it because it's a good governance practice. If we hold the rest of the district accountable, this should be, we should also hold ourselves accountable. So this is a good way to provide us the opportunity to do that. And a lot of times, because we have so much work and things before us, that we don't always take the time to talk about our board work. Most of the conversation a lot of times is about the work of the district. So this also allows us an opportunity to look at our own work. There is more and more evidence pointing to the effectiveness that when board members work together as a cohesive team with their superintendent, that they're able to have a positive impact on student achievement. So we want to make sure then that we're reflecting on our work, and so that we can make sure that we're doing the best for our students. So in terms of the way the board's evaluated itself on this document, first wanted to thank all 5 board members for filling it out. And the board self-evaluation is based on a 4.0 scale. There are 9 categories that the board evaluated itself. And the average over those 9 categories, like I said, a 4.0, it was a 3.7. And the board kind of operated also within a narrow range of those 9 categories. The lowest category was a 3.4 that the board gave itself, and that was in planning. And then the highest was a 3.9. And there were 2 areas that the board evaluated itself at 3.9 in board performance and board and superintendent relationships. And, I looked to see how'd you do last year. So, just to kind of verify that the board has been consistently operating at a high level. So last year, the overall average was a 3.7. And the year before that, it was a 3.5. So sometimes even as we fill out these board self-evaluations, as much as we sit up, at the board table and we're doing our work, we're not really kind of recognizing or acknowledging, I guess, the fact that we are, performing at a high level, that we're a high performing board and we're doing the things that we are supposed to be doing. So sometimes it's, good to take a step back and look at that and kind of help validate the work that we're doing already. So I just wanted to kind of quickly take the board through this, and please feel free to stop at any time, ask questions at any time. Because like I said, this is your evaluation. So, this conversation is for you. The first page of it is an assessment of what you value, asking what's important to you, recognizing all of these things are important, but where do we consider our greatest efforts to be put? And from New Jersey School Board's perspective, we look to see where you or how you evaluated student achievement. And in this case, you'll see that that was the highest area that the board gave itself in terms of what it valued, and gave itself a 4.0 in student achievement. And so just then now wanted to take you through each one of the areas just quickly. So starting with the first one was planning. And one of the things I wanted the board to acknowledge or see is that you'll see from, the 5 of you are pretty much on the same page. I almost kind of drew a line in the middle of the paper between with good and commendable on one side and adequate and unsatisfactory on the other side. And you'll see that for most of these categories, the board was always kind of to the side of everyone in agreement that the board was either good or commendable in those areas. Like I said, planning was the area that the board evaluated itself the lowest, but we have to put it in perspective that 3.4 clearly, is not low. But I guess the challenging perspective this year was, that planning was an ongoing, constant thing, and it seemed like no matter what plans you were doing, you had to shift and change. And so I think it was a challenging year, but I know that planning is integral to the work of your district. I mean, I've had the pleasure to be here at times when the board was having its goal setting meetings and goal setting discussions, so that I know that that does drive the work of what we do here. And I thought it was good as the board commented, said that that you do collaborate together, have meaningful discussions about your goals, and that the work continued throughout the year, that the board didn't let this say that we're not going to move forward, we're not going to make progress, and that it was important to have communication with the community about the work that was taking place. The next section was on policies. And when we look at policies, we look at it from 2 perspectives, looking at the policy work that the board does. We say that you're a policy making body. So there are, actual policy, we have a policy manual, and the work that we do on our policy manual to make sure that it's in compliance, to make sure that it's current, and that the policies, the guidance that we're providing for the administration, helps them do the work that they need to do. And then separately from that, we also then, it helps define our role. If we say that we're a policy-making body, then that means that we recognize then that we don't run the district, that we, have to make sure it's well run, that we avoid the day-to-day running of the district, and recognize that that's the work of the administration. So again, do we acknowledge or recognize that that's what our role is? And here I think the board was clear how important policy was to you this year in terms of all the decisions that needed to be made, all the guidance that was needed, that you found, a value in your policy work for this year. And then also said that, the board supported the administration and made sure that the administration had the support it needed to carry out the work of the district this year. The next section was on student achievement. And again, clear that that is a priority for this district, even through the pandemic. Talked about the work of your education committee. And, even the other member, I thought it was great that even the other members that aren't on the committee said, I'm aware of the goals. I'm aware of the work that's taking place. I get the communication and information that I need. And it's also important for me to understand what are the values of the community when it comes to their student achievement expectations. So, we kind of say that from the board's perspective, we want to make sure that you can talk the walk, that you're not actually doing it, but you need to understand what it is, the work that's taking place, and be able to explain it to the community. So I felt like in looking at how the board evaluated itself that, that was evident. The next section was finance. So this was a high area for the board, despite all the challenges as I was going through, and they're saying, okay, what we had an interim business administrator, you have a new auditor, you're going through a referendum. I mean, this was a challenging year from a financial perspective, but sometimes challenges cause us to work together more closely and make sure, that we're all working together, to advance the work of the district. So in this case, that was, what somebody said, we're making sure that we're focusing on student achievement and that we are balancing that financial impact of it. And then one of the board members, I think, mentioned that we're going to continue a board goal that you had as a process to evaluate your vendors. So again, that's, a great practice that the board is undertaking. The next section is board operations. So this talks about, the work that you do as a board. And, sometimes 5-member boards sometimes find it challenging to figure out how to make committees effectively work for them. And I thought it was great to see that as a group, you have figured that out. And, everybody said that your committee work does what it needed to do for you. It helps lessen the total work of the board. It helps you be able to delve into, more deeply in the specific committees that you're assigned to. And then communication then gets to the rest of the board about the committees that you may not be part of. So again, working together, and I think that, the word teamwork, the word cooperation, continue to surface throughout this. Then the next section was board performance. And so this takes a little bit of a different view of looking at the board's work more from ethics, from confidentiality, working together in a spirit of trust and respect. And this was tied for the highest area that the board evaluated itself. And here the board gave itself a 3.9, with a lot of the indicators being a 4.0. And then even the bottom section where you talked about you as the, as the board member, again, that was all 4.0. And, to me, it's not so much the numbers as looking at the comments and things that the board would say about one another. And so it's, said, this is important to us. We work together, we put our heart and soul in this, we have high ethical standards. So to me, those are the things that are really important in the way that you look at your work and look at your responsibility for your work. The next section then was board and superintendent relationships. And here again was the area that was tied at a 3.9 as the highest area. And, when we look at board superintendent relationships, usually the things that make for a strong relationship are things that were all mentioned here. Communication, mutual respect, understanding our roles, using the chain of command. So those are all of the things then that help, provide for a strong relationship. Then the next section was board and staff relationships. And if we say that we're using the chain of command and our communication goes through the superintendent, so how do we have a strong how do we have a relationship with the staff? So the way that we would do that is making sure that as a board, we recognize the work of our staff, and we, provide for that recognition, that we are able to, go attend functions in the schools and support the work. So this year made that a little bit of a challenge. But then also too, this year it was mentioned, just because of the challenges in the year, that the board did have enhanced communication with the staff, just to move through some things that were, going on as a result of this year. And then the last section is board and community. And there was only one, the last indicator, number 7, that was the lowest indicator that the board gave itself. We say anything under a 3.0 would be something that the board would want to give more consideration to. So this was the only indicator, has an effective community relations program. So that was the only indicator that the board gave itself a 2.8. And that's not unusual, as much as we continue, there's some things that we're never going to stop doing, and we're never going to be as good as we can be at it. We continue to find new ways to engage and reach out and listen to our community. So it is typically not surprising that is an area that the board will continue to say that this is something that we can continue to do better at. So that was it for the 9 categories. Then we were asked to, recognizing that student achievement is our highest priority, what are 3 challenges that we see the district facing? So in terms of looking at those things where there was more than one person that gave that response, it was the budget and finances, the growth and relationship with the VEA, your diversity and inclusion work, and a successful return to, I guess, what we would call a new normal, right? And then there were other things that the board mentioned as well. And then you were asked to talk about any training that would be helpful. And so there was mention about policies making, legal issues, finances, the continuation of your diversity and inclusion work, and communication. So, you know, all things that we have talked about through the board self-evaluation. So typically, like, the outcome of this might be that you would use information from this, and as you continue to look at and develop board goals, to take information out of the board self-evaluation as part of that discussion for goals that you as the board might want to work on for yourselves. There was also some charts that went along with it. I mean, there's not, I guess, startling information on here just because of the consistency in your information. So the first chart just compares what we said on page 1 that we value in each one of the 9 areas to how we evaluated ourselves as a board in those areas. So that ideally where we say it's important work for us, making sure that that matches the work that we're doing. The second chart looks at how we evaluated in each category the board score versus the individual score. Again, we would like to see that the board scores are higher, which they were pretty much for you in every area, just because we, you know, would like to think of the synergy of us working together as a team, that it would be more than any of us could accomplish individually. And then the third chart looks at your scores from last year to this year in each one of the 9 areas. So that was all that I had for the board self-evaluation. I just would like to see now if the board had any questions for me. And again, just wanted to thank you for taking the time to do this and for the work that you do here.
Thanks, Charlene. I'd like to chime in real quick. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for coming. I know you've done this a few times and you do a wonderful job. I also want to say that if I had a 3.7 GPA in high school, I would have been real happy. So to have a 3.7 score is very good for the board. But as you said, scoring aside, it's really, what does this survey mean? No offense to you, but I've done this survey eight times now. This is my 8th time. It's not the most exciting survey to do, to be honest with you. But it also, when we review this together, it also shows us that we're aligned as a board, that we're thinking similar ways, that there's any disparity of what's going on the board internally, we know about that and flush it out. This has been a challenging year for the board. It's been a challenging year for the administration and the staff. And the fact that, we've been a cohesive group, worked together through the challenges, worked together with the administration, worked together with the staff and the parents and the students. And again, it's been a trying time, and this probably is the highest score that in those 8 years that I've seen with this board. So I want to give kudos to the board and the staff and administration for, pulling this all together, and support from the community. So, but again, thank you for coming, and, just want to give my 2 cents. But again, 3.7, I'd love to have that in high school. So.
Jim, I want to thank you for your comments as well. And Ms. Peterson, thank you so much for coming. It's really an important thing to us. And I think to Jim's point, when we're talking about doing this year after year, board members change year after year. So it's, I think, impressive that with new people coming from new backgrounds, and a lot of us didn't know each other before, to be able to come together, learn each other's styles, collaborate, and really work together to have such a positive outcome was really a boon to my fellow board members. So I just thank everybody, because it was absolutely a challenge on a lot of levels. So it's really nice to be able to have this done and have everybody participate in it. So thank you to everybody. Does anybody else have any questions or comments in regard to the self-eval?
Okay, you wanna
If
pull the
not,
PowerPoint up?
then we could move on, and Ms. Peterson is going to continue with a presentation. And right now, we completed the board self-eval before our bigger challenge came, and our bigger challenge is going to begin a search for a new superintendent. So Ms. Peterson is going to give us a presentation on best practices in recruitment and hiring. And, you know, we are a relatively new board and have not done this before, so this is really valuable. So thank you for this as well.
Sure. So I'm just going to kind of do an overview of what a search process will look like. So not specifically to say New Jersey School Board's process or any particular search firm's process, but just in general, kind of what are the steps that you would follow? What are the things that you would look out for? What are the questions that you might need to ask? So that when you are, you know, I know that you did an RFP, you know, looking for proposals for search firms, so that as you're reviewing them, you know, some things that you might want to consider or look out for. So that was the intent tonight, was just to kind of do an overview on what a search process looks like. Okay, what am I point? Oh, there we go. So in terms of, you know, looking at this from the board's perspective, you know, we when New Jersey School Boards does trading with boards, we always tell you that, you know, kind of one of your most important tasks that you have is hiring a superintendent. And I was recently in a district, and a member of the community, you know, came up to the microphone and said, "I don't understand why you're saying this. Why isn't educating our children the most important thing?" And I just kind of want to make the point that that is why we're here. You know, that's the essence of our work. That's our mission. That's our vision. So now our task is, how do we do that in the best way that we can? And the superintendent plays such an instrumental role in making sure that we are providing the best opportunities for your students, that's why it's such an important task of the board. So we, you know, a lot of times when board members think about the search process and think, okay, we haven't done this before, that it can be a little intimidating, but just kind of want to emphasize the fact that it is a process. And when we follow the process, you know, we can remove the need for this fear, hopefully. So just kind of wanted to take you through some of these are the different steps I was going to take you through. So wanted to start out just in general with what the legal requirements are for hiring a superintendent. So the state requires that the person has to hold a school administrator certificate, or the certificate of eligibility means you've got the certificate but not sat in the seat yet. New Jersey requires that you have to be a resident. So if you were to hire someone from outside the state, they would have to move here within a year. A superintendent's tenure in your district is their contract. So the minimum contract a board can offer a superintendent is 3 years. The maximum is 5 years. So this recognizes that a contract year ends on June 30th. So if you were to hire somewhere in between that, it could be 3.5 years, 4.5, but it can never be less than 3, and it can never be more than 5. To have a second set of eyes on the contract, the state requires that the executive county superintendent, so the Essex County superintendent, would have to review the contract before the board could approve the person. And then once salary caps went away, the kind of the language now that the state said we're accountable to is that compensation is subject to comparability requirements. And I will show you what that means. So basically saying that on a board, as you're considering a base salary for a superintendent, it would have to be comparable to similarly credentialed and experienced administrators in the area with a similar enrollment achievement. So they will look at that then as the kind of the consideration. The other thing is, while they took the caps away, one of the things that the state did not take away is the opportunity for merit goals in a superintendent's contract. I can tell you that most of the newer contracts do not have merit goals in them any longer. It seems that now that the money can be put in salary, that's where it seems to happen, that merit goals are not pensionable. So most superintendents as well prefer that that's where the money is placed. So again, going to take you through the steps of the process and just wanted to confirm, the only thing that would prevent a board member from participating would be if you had a relative who works in this district. So I don't think is anybody in that situation? No. Okay, so that would be the only thing that would prevent a board member from being able to participate in this process. So as we, go through the steps, really the biggest piece of it is now preparing, getting ready. So I'm going to take you through what that looks like. So, once you are aware that you have a vacancy as a board, that you've already kind of entertained the fact that now you have to make a decision. How are we going to move forward? What's the best way to undertake this process? So you have choices. If you could do it yourself, you could hire a search firm, hire the state association. So once you've kind of made that decision, you also have to consider the scope. If you want to just consider New Jersey only, do you want to look at a certain region? Do you want to make it a national search? Because that could change what search firm you're going to use. Some are national, some are just here local in New Jersey. So those are all things that you would have to consider. And then would also have to consider a budget. There are fees for the consultant. There typically any advertising that's done, if it's in the newspaper or wherever you would do that advertising, might be additional costs. You might have additional costs in doing background checks. And even, in consultant fees, I was talking with a group last week and they said, okay, if this is your cost, are there other add-ons? Are there other things that we have to be on lookout for? So that would be something that you would have to consider too, as you see the pricing that comes in from search firms. Is it just one fixed price for something, or are there incremental prices for different services? The timeline or the calendar is something that as a board, we always try and say, because of the importance of this process and the importance of getting it right, to not let the calendar drive the work that you do, that making sure that getting it right is what should drive this work. So while the calendar will allow us to plan some things and kind of set a guideline, just want to make sure that what drives the work is getting it right. So in looking at that calendar, just wanted to pinpoint a few things, and that is that sometimes we don't really realize how much of this process is outside of what the board can control. Typically, the ad is posted for 30 days. So there's a month already. The person you hire, usually has to give anywhere from 60 to 90 days notice from the district that they're coming from. So again, that could be 2 to 3 months before they can start in the district. That again, you don't have much control over that. So the board's control is kind of when you want to get the process started, when you want to have the new person in place, and then when it comes time to doing the interviews, how close together do you want to do each one of those interview rounds? So it's important, once the board then, does decide the search firm or how it's going to move forward, we've talked about the importance of you working together as a team. So it's important to have a conversation with the board and understand what the board's thoughts are, like what your expectations are. Ask you to, understand what your vision is for the district. If, you were to close your eyes and it's 5 years from now, like what do you see, the Verona School District looking like? And the reason I say that is because, I've had even different boards tell me, that's the importance of someone's vision matching your vision, and that how important that is to success, that that person understands the direction that the district and the community wants to go, and that that person's vision is in alignment with that. We need to know, why this is a great place to live and work, what makes your district unique, what are things that are background experiences that would be important for this person to have. Is it important to you that they've been a superintendent before, that they've been a principal, like that they've been a classroom teacher? Like what are those experiences that are important? And then what are those characteristics or leadership styles that are important? Should they be approachable? Should they be visible? Should they be visionary? Like, what are those things that are important to your district? Recognizing then that we are trying to find the perfect, that you are trying to find the perfect fit for you. And, we will, and almost, every search firm will have these same conversations, not only with the board, but also with the staff in the community. And we're in kind of a different place right now in terms of, the board is the group that is legally charged. You are legally charged with hiring a superintendent. That is, your legal responsibility. And you are also the only group that can be held accountable for confidentiality. It's part of the code of ethics. There's, consequences if you're not, and you are the only group that, has that kind of that responsibility. So, oftentimes get asked, well, the staff would like to be part of the interview process, so the community would like to be part of the interview process, but we really have to recognize that you're in a delicate balance right now, that the best candidates, or you probably will be candidates perhaps that, don't want the district that they're in right now to know that they're looking for another job. So confidentiality is so critical to the process that, I will even have, I've had superintendents tell me, if a board's doing their own search, sometimes they'll say that I'm not applying because I don't know where my paperwork's laying around, or I don't know what's being done with it. Or I've had a superintendent tell me that he got called and said the interview was going to contain other people other than the board members, and just said, take my name out. Like, I can't afford to be put in that situation. So we're tasked with kind of that responsibility of saying, we want to get the best person for the district, and we don't want to do anything to compromise that. We don't want to do anything to make them not want to feel confident to put their name in the hat here. So we want to make sure then that it's the board's responsibility to keep that confidential. But we also know that the board can't do this by itself, that the board responds and interacts with the superintendent completely differently than the staff do, than the community, than the parents, than the students. So if we're going to make the right decision, you need to know what's important to all of those stakeholders, so that when you look at the applicants, you're looking at them through the lens of not only what's important to the board, but what is important to all of the stakeholders in order to make the decision in the best interest of the district. So, so again, like I said, it's important that we provide opportunities not only to hear what's important to the staff and the community, but also to inform them, to have a presentation typically similar to this as part of these input sessions, specifically on whatever process you would be using. And then the importance of communication, just continually at your board meetings. There may not be a lot of things you can be able to say, perhaps because it's confidential, but at least can say, the process is moving along. We've done this, we're moving here. Many boards will have a separate section on their website just for the superintendent search, so that people can go there who are looking for information about the process. And then, so we're still all in preparation and all the work that we're doing to get ready here. So then you would have decisions to make about advertising. It's kind of interesting that education is one of the few places that you still go to the Sunday Star Ledger, right, and look through kind of the print advertising to find jobs. So you would have to consider whether whether you wanted to advertise that way. Your online advertising presence, again, if it was thought that you wanted this to be a national search, typically like Education Week, or there would be other national publications that you would then decide if you wanted to advertise in. So again, those would be, all considerations for the board. And like I said, typically the advertising, if it's in the print and some of these other areas, may be separate costs above the cost of the consultant. So one of the things as the board looks at putting its ad together, wanted to talk about the importance of 2 words in your ad, and that would be required and preferred. So if the board identifies a characteristic or a qualification in the ad and you say that it is required, then that means that someone like that the board cannot consider someone who doesn't have it. You know, in order to conduct a legally defensible search, you would only be able to interview and consider people who have this required qualification. If we say that something is preferred, then that means that if you have it and I don't, you are a better match to the criteria, but that doesn't preclude me from being considered. So as the board, as you put your ad together, you will need to think about, you know, the more things you make preferred, you're casting a wider net perhaps, and then you can narrow it down once they get here. Or you may, you know, I worked with the board a couple years ago who was insistent that the only way someone could be successful there is if they had been a previous sitting superintendent. So they made that required. And I said, okay, just so you know, like that will eliminate all your staff. And they said, that's okay, we don't care. Like this, you know, we consider this to be that important to the success here. So as a board, you know, just need to consider, you know, what are those things? Like we typically will say some kind of administrative experience, be it 3 years, 5 years, you know, that usually you should make that required just so that someone has sat in the seat and had some administrative experience. So now going through the next part of it then is, okay, so now we've kind of done our work to get our ad out there. So now we're, you know, collecting information. We're, so just wanted to show you some of the things that you may receive. So typically any search firm, anyone, you know, will ask for usually the letter of interest, a resume, copy of that required certificate, and some references. And then there may be other things on top of that. Some, you know, places have an application that you would need to fill out. And, you know, a lot of that is because, you know, you think one resume could be 1 page, one could be 4 pages long. So I want to make sure that the board has consistent information on each one of the applicants. So that might be something you want to consider. And then too, in some search firms or some, you know, different processes, sometimes the board, the search firm might do some of the interviewing and then just pass along the names and the information to the board on the candidates that they recommend. So in some processes, you will get all of the information on every candidate. In some processes, you may get information just on the recommended candidates. So again, that might be something that you might want to ask or, you know, talk about being of importance to you. And then there's usually a process then of taking that input that we got from the staff, we got from the community, we got from the board, we got, you know, all of our stakeholders, and then develops a criteria, kind of a profile of then what does that superintendent in Verona look like based on all of that input that we've received, and then look at the applications, look at that information against that criteria, then to kind of start helping to identify who would be a good fit. Again, thinking that we, you know, need to start determining who we're going to interview. So interviews can look a little bit differently. I mean, in some cases, like I said, you may have a search firm that kind of does that first round of interviews for you and help, you know, does some screening, or it may be that the board, you know, goes through all of the applications and will decide that itself who they want to bring in for an interview. So typically that first round, even if the search firm's doing it or the board's doing it, is usually very structured so that everyone has a fair shot to kind of move through the process, and everyone can say, okay, that if I rose forward, it's because I had the same chance you did and was able to do it more effectively. Then in that next round, typically then you are cutting the number of people you're talking to in half each time, so that then the next round is when you're doing kind of a more intensive digging. Can we see you as our next superintendent? And then you may get it down to a couple finalists and say, okay, we've got it down to a few people now, want to bring you back. And then like typically might have you do a presentation or have you come and talk to the board almost as if, you were the superintendent, and give them some scenarios or situations. So each time you're kind of moving the process along, getting more information. I've seen some cases the superintendent's asked to provide a writing sample. So you may have to decide what information you need in order to select who would be the right person for you. And then, so typically, at least, we say because of that whole confidentiality, that usually we, if the process is going the way you hope it does, that the board gets down to a final one. So we don't say that that person is your next superintendent yet. We just say that person is your finalist. And then that then is when the, vetting would take place of doing reference and background checks. You might have that person come and spend a day in the district, have them meet with different stakeholder groups all day. Again, recognizing it's still the board's decision, it's still the board's work, but it's important to allow our stakeholders that opportunity. Board may choose to go to that person's district, depending on, a lot of this is depending on what's going on with COVID at the time, right? And whether you're able to do those things. But I guess just the point is that once you're down to a finalist, recognize, that your work is not done, that you picked that person yet, but make sure then that you're still doing the vetting to make sure that it's the right person. And then, so what if passes all the vetting, then we're down to, contract negotiations. And again, because of the, a lot of the restrictions that the state has placed on us as a board, there's not a lot of things that we can negotiate, other than the salary, the length in the contract, just a few other things. New Jersey school boards, we had put a model contract to get for boards to consider, and then the superintendent's association had put a model contract together for superintendents to ask for. And when all of these changes came, the two of us just joined together, and we have one model contract that both organizations, advocate. And just, if we're lucky enough that we make it through that process and find the right person, then that really is what we would consider to be, that's that successful result of the board and the superintendent working together. I'm seeing I skipped a couple slides right to talking about just kind of saying then that once the person is here, that our job is really not done yet, but also that transition. We talked about goals. We talked about, the importance of that person now, clarifying expectations with that person to help, set the road for success, and making sure that we understand what our communication expectations are, and, help that person work together to be successful. And so that was all that I had in terms of just kind of giving an overview of a superintendent search process, and didn't know if anyone had any questions for me about it or.
Thank you very, very much. As I said, this is a new process for this board. I think Mr. Day was the only board member 7 years ago when we hired Dr. Dionisio. So this is very, very helpful, and I'm sure we're going to be going over these slides, and I'm sure I'm going to be contacting you with questions. So thank you for always your quick and very valuable input whenever I email you, which is often. So I do appreciate it. Do anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Shirley. I feel like, I have to say, even being like a new board, I feel like when we kind of first started generally talking about the process, that, I mean, not to toot our horn, but I'm kind of impressed. Like, I feel like we were on the right track when we started talking about what the process was without really having a deep understanding of it. But this was great. This is exactly what we need to get the ball rolling. Yep.
Great, thank you so much. Good luck. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you very much, Arlene. Oh, boy. Okay, so we are through our presentation portion of the meeting, and we are going to turn it over to Dr. Dionisio for the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Very proud to announce that we have, it's really great to see all of our athletics and marching band being very, very active over the past month. Obviously, work going on through the summer and preparing for the new school year, but it's great to see all of our students and our coaches and staff back on campus and the students back at it. So that's been refreshing. Our first day of school for our staff will be September 8th on Wednesday. We're excited to welcome back all of our students on September 9th. And we have new teacher orientation, which is actually begins tomorrow morning, September 1st at HBW. So all good things in order there. Last week on Friday, I shared the district plan that's based on the Road Forward Plan, the CDC, and the NJDOH guidance, as well as Governor Murphy's executive orders. That was shared via email and on our district website with a summary email and hyperlinks in conjunction with the Road Forward Plan from the Department of Education. That's also located on our website. VHS and HBW recently also followed up with emails to parents detailing the school reopening plans and operations within those buildings, providing some more context specifically for those parents. In addition to that, our elementary school principals finalized their details. That will be going out tomorrow afternoon from all 4 elementary schools. One addition that was not in last week's summary for the elementary schools is some more context around lunch and snack. So students will be able to eat outside when the weather and conditions permit. In the event that outdoor eating is not possible, then the indoor lunch plan or the snack plan will be to take place in the classrooms with the students eating at their desks, as we outlined last week, minimum of 3 feet apart, unmasked, and utilizing the desk shields for the eating portion of the day as an additional mitigation strategy. The students must bring in, of course, a nut-free lunch or snack. Additional lunch periods have been added in order to maintain social distancing at recess. As parents know, the elementary schools prior to the pandemic, we would have one common lunch, more or less, that was divided with recess and eating. That's just not possible while maintaining the distancing and the supervision of our children. So our principals have coordinated a plan to be able to have that in place, and they'll share out more details tomorrow. And any questions that parents may have, please contact your building principal. They're your best resource around specifics in your schools. And that's all I have for the superintendent's report. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Roberts, our board attorney, who has some legal updates to provide to our Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr.
I can't hear. I'm just wanting to put that out there.
As you are likely aware, Governor Murphy is Order 251. Perfect. Concerning mandatory masking in schools. Pursuant to the executive order, all public, private, and parochial school programs and elementary and secondary schools, including charter and Renaissance schools, must maintain a policy regarding mandatory use of face masks by staff, students, and visitors in the indoor portion of the school district premises. This order is subject to very limited exceptions. Specifically, masks are only permitted to be removed in the following situations. When doing so would inhibit the individual's health, such as when the individual is exposed to extreme heat indoors, when the individual has trouble breathing, is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove a face mask without assistance, when a student's documented medical condition or disability as reflected in an IEP or 504 plan precludes the use of a face mask, when the individual is under 2 years of age, when the individual is engaged in activity that can physically be performed while wearing a mask, such as eating or drinking, or playing a musical instrument that will be obstructed by a face mask, when the individual is engaged in high-intensity aerobic or anaerobic activity, when a student is participating in high-intensity physical activities during a physical education class in a well-ventilated location and able to maintain a physical distance of 6 feet from all other individuals, or when wearing a face mask creates an unsafe condition in which to operate equipment or execute a task. To reiterate, these are the only exemptions to the governor's mask order. You may have read about other school districts throughout the state, including the governor's home district of Middletown, attempting to avoid the mask requirements by allowing parents to submit anecdotal notes describing how mask wearing would be detrimental to their child's health. The governor picked up on this and addressed that as part of a follow-up order, Executive Order 253. In that order, the governor specifically clarified that notes of this type are unacceptable and that only documentation from a medical professional can be accepted to prove the need for a health-based exemption. There have also been questions raised by members of the public throughout the state as to whether their school district can simply ignore these executive orders, claiming that they are not consistent with the ever-changing nature of COVID-19 or CDC guidance. On this aspect, there can be no reasonable debate. The New Jersey courts have long held that executive orders have the force and effect of law, and for that reason, the district simply cannot ignore these or any other executive orders that they wish. The governor has made clear that failure to comply with this order would subject the district to penalty, including but not limited to loss of state aid. Because of that, I'm unable to recommend any such course of action to the board here. The proper route to contest a governor's action is to file a complaint in either Superior Court or United States District Court and allow a judge to determine whether the governor's action is legal or illegal. I'm aware of at least one class action lawsuit pending in the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey over this matter. And if anyone would like the name of that case, please feel free to email me after this meeting and I will provide you with the name and docket number. With all that being said concerning mandatory masking, I would like to take this opportunity to address the public on this issue. As all you know, the Board of Education must set aside time during its meetings for public comment. During that time, members of the public generally have the right to speak on any topic they wish, regardless of whether these topics are unpleasant or congratulatory. However, the law is equally clear that a Board of Education has the authority to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. This includes, but is not limited to, the amount of time the public may speak, as well as reserving the right to terminate public comment altogether where the remarks are repetitive, abusive, too lengthy, or otherwise not in keeping with the decorum of a proper meeting. Student masking is clearly a school-related issue. However, I would encourage members of the public wishing to speak on this matter to avoid urging the board to ignore the executive orders, as that would be illegal. As I've stated previously, the board has no control over this masking executive order. Any change to that would have to come from the governor or through the courts. I would also urge the public to avoid repeating what other members have already said or simply coming to the microphone to give a me too. While the board may not respond to every comment received, I can assure you that the board listens and hears what is being said. So concludes my update.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. At this part in our agenda, we were going to continue with our committee reports. And we have first was athletic and co-curricular, Mrs. Prisco and Mr. Allworth.
Yes, I'll speak on that. I'm unmuted. Thanks, Sarah. We met and there's really not much to report except that it's nice to see that all the athletic programs are out and running with the coaches and students and the marching band outdoors. There is one thing that was brought to our attention that's been ongoing was the softball Florida trip that the team missed unfortunately last year, and they were hoping to do it again this March. However, due to COVID numbers and restrictions of deposits being lost, it's still in discussion, but it's most likely they will be canceling that trip just because they will lose too much money if they do not. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Prisco. Does anybody have any questions on that? Moving along, our next committee report is from Education, and that's Mr. Allworth and Mrs. Droppy.
Yeah, I will take that. Give me. All right. So our CPAC will be holding their meeting September 15th right here in the auditorium from 3:30 to 4:30. They are also going to record it. So for anyone that is unable to make that meeting, they will be able to see it. September 30th, they're going to have their first speaker of the Parent Training Speaker Series. We say the first speaker because there will be a number of different speakers. It's not going to be the same speaker every time. So you can kind of come to whichever ones apply to you, but it is probably, it's advised that you go to all of them because they will kind of build on each other. Personnel wise, we are still short a number of paraprofessionals, and we're hoping to get all of those filled before the school year. We're using some agencies to get those positions filled. I believe we're still filling those, right? Yeah. But that's always an ongoing issue with the paraprofessionals. So that should be okay by the time school gets going. Preschool will be a little different. So there's some information going out about that before the school year about what the preschool program will look like. We're down a couple tuition students. But aside from that, that's it for that. Now, there are a number of policies that are up for, there's a number of revisions of some policies that are being discussed, the district-wide parental involvement. The only real change there is that we have a district-wide policy and the state would prefer it to be broken down for each school. So that's a little change there. All the policies that we're updating are pretty standard updates. AP results have been released. Dr. Miller will be going over those at a future board meeting. Our road forward plan, Dr. Dionisio just covered. We spent a lot of time discussing that. The curriculum, number of updates to the curriculum, all pretty standard. We're updating the science curriculum, the Spanish curriculum, a couple other subjects, but it's all normal revisions and changes to the curriculum. The biggest thing was the standardized testing. We are going to do the Start Strong assessment in lieu of the NJSLA, and we have a range of time that we can do it. We are most likely going to give it in October. I think we're looking at the 4th for the elementary, the 11th for the middle school, and the 18th for the high school, but I think that'll be finalized as we get closer. And we have a number of people that have applied to replace Mr. Shells, and we're going to look into all of those and hopefully get that rolling as soon as possible. Yes, please.
Just to clarify, the September 15th meeting is for our district's mental health committee. That's that committee work that we did back in 2017 and met on a regular basis. On September 15th, we'll be having a meeting where I'll be presenting some new district mental health initiatives that are going to be moving forward and what our progress has been over time. In addition, at the end of September at that Board of Education meeting, I will also be doing a presentation, the same presentation for the Board of Education and the community to see that also. The invite for the September 15th meeting did go out to those members of the district's mental health committee. So if you could please respond to those, that would be great. Thank you.
And that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Allworth. I just have one question. Can you please repeat the Start Strong assessment is replacing
The NJSLA?
the NJSLA? Okay.
Just for this year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, just like the deal that because we didn't give NJSLA in the spring due to COVID,
Okay.
that was the alternative that New Jersey is allowing the districts to do.
Okay, so it's a 1 year.
This is it, yeah.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? on
I would just, I guess,
education report?
Mr. Miller, just trying to find out, do we have a date when you're going to go over the AP scores? Because I'm interested in that. Is that your answer? Yes, you're looking at the date.
Yes, we're looking at the end of October, at the second board meeting in October.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I just want to clarify what you were saying, Sarah. We're taking the Start Strong this fall, but we will still take the NJSLA next spring.
Okay.
So we'll have double the fun.
Of course.
That's
Mhm.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not our choice, it's the state.
Gotcha. And if there's no other questions on Education Committee, we're going to move to our facilities report, and that's Mr. Day and Mrs. Prisco.
And I will do that report. And where's my glasses? There you go. We have a few things to go over about facilities. HVAC, of course, now I'm wearing a mask and my glasses steam up. I love wearing masks. But regarding the HVAC, we went through that with Connor, so we have that information out there. Regarding the high school, a lot of activity going on. The tennis court fence, we're looking to repair that. It's not completed yet. The repairs will tentatively be completed by the end of October. The fence is on back order, so we're having a tough time trying to repair that. The sidewalk repairs of the high school are completed. New carpet in the auditorium. Right, you see there the lovely carpet. Hope you guys enjoy that. That's completed. The lights upgraded over the letters in the lobby. So a lot of these things you can see on the way out, they look beautiful. New railings in the areas of the hallways completed. New doors in the teacher's room. Workroom is not completed yet. The doors are on back order. So that's one of the things that we've run through during the COVID world, is that a lot of things are on back order. And even if you order them 6 months ahead of time, you still have to wait. Regarding Lanning, again, the repairs were painting of the multi-purpose room and the new shades in the multi-purpose room and sidewalks are all completed. FN Brown, the new stair treads are in the main and auditorium entrances are completed. Sidewalk and driveway apron repairs are completed. New door in the counselor office is not completed. Again, that is another door that's on back order. Forest Avenue, the new shades are completed. So those Forest Avenue folks, you have those new shades are in now. And HPW, the new floor and ceiling tiles and lights are in the gym hallway are up and running. New carpet in the music room is completed and painting of the music room is completed. And the last thing we talked about a little bit about the COVID cleaning protocols. I know our maintenance crew did an amazing job last year of keeping the facilities clean, follow-up cleaning and continuing that. The only difference we have this year is that we have lunch, which shows a little bit of a variable in there. So there's going to be additional cleaning required between the different lunch sessions. And if you have any additional questions about that, you can reach out to Mr. Higgins, who's the Director of Facilities. That's about it. Anything else, Mrs. Prisco?
Yes, I would just like to add that all these projects that were completed were done over the summer by Mr. Higgins and his crew. This is not part of the referendum. Everything with the referendum has been completed, except the portion we spoke about earlier about the HVAC. So these are just additional projects that have been done to maintain our buildings. So just so the public's aware of that. And thank you, Mr. Higgins and crew.
And team, yes. And you too, Connor.
Does anybody have any questions in regard to the facilities report?
It was an amazing report.
It was, Jim.
Yeah.
So you could roll right into community
Yeah,
resources
then I get
then
to
as
go
well.
down. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think this is one of the biggest crowds we've had. We were trying to think of ways to get more people to come. One of the ways I was going to threaten to hug everybody or give everybody a high five as a way to lure everybody in, but that might scare people off. The other idea was to bring in food and whatever we could do, bring more people in. Our goal is, as we talked about as a board, because some people have talked about our format, how we do things today. Our goal is to keep the kids in school, bring the children to school, right? We also want to do that with the community. We want the community to come to our meeting. I get energized by people. I love having people in front of me to talk to be able to see what's going on in the world here. We are looking at ways to use technology. So we've done an analysis of other districts around the area. And we found a majority of them right now are in person. Doesn't mean we won't change in the future. Right now, we'd love to have people here attend, get life back to normal. Hopefully we don't have to wear the masks in the future, but that's where we are today. But right now, at this point, we're going to do an analysis, how to use technology, how to maybe use Google Forms, how to be able to have the community connect with the board, how to have them connect with the administration. And again, we're going to continue to talk about it as a board, but at this point, we're going to continue with the existing format. And the fact that we have the Zoom meeting available the next day is important to make sure that everybody has the ability to see it as soon as possible. Anything else to add, Mr. Frisco or Mrs. Fresky?
No, the only thing I would like to add is that we do have all the agendas, the resolutions, all the supporting document goes onto the website for public review on Friday. According to the law, it's a 48-hour rule. We do 4 days instead of 2 days. So people do have time to digest. If there's questions or concerns, people have time to contact us before our board meeting. And as Mr. Day said, our videos are uploaded within 24 hours and always accessible. And we are looking into Google Forms and different formats to continue. But other than that, I think we're good. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, so if not, we're going to move along. And at this point in the meeting, we're going to open it up to public comments on agenda items only. So if anybody has something, and please reference the agenda item, the resolution number that you're referring to, please. And we need your name and your address.
Hello, good evening. Christina Ford, 50 East Reed Place, Verona, obviously. I have a bunch of questions on resolutions. I like what Mr. Day said about public involvement and wanting people engaged and all that. And part of that is to give actual notice of things that are going on. And I know, Mrs. Freshy, you actually said all the resolutions are there, but quite a few of them are not online or attached to this paper. And therefore, we did not have actual public notice that this was going to be discussed today. You can't just say we're about to discuss school lunch. We need to know what the details about that are. That's just an example, but I can go specifically through this. I was wondering where we could find, and you don't have to answer these questions, but I think everybody's asking them, where we can find on the website or in the school.
Which resolutions are you talking to? This is action items only right now?
I'm about to go through each one of them and what is missing. The ones tonight, and I know I only have a short time, so the first resolution, where can I find the minutes for the confidential meetings, which is required by law? I know that there's limitations on that, but they have to be released once a decision has been made on anything. I haven't seen any of those anywhere on any website. Then I skip to resolution 10. It talks about the written curriculum being attached. It is not attached to this document, so that, and I did not see that anywhere specifically on the website or anything. Resolution 12, none of those are anywhere. I mean, you make a decision about, I don't even know what parental involvement means, the update about how we can participate in meetings and the length of time. There's no policy anywhere. We did not get public notice. We did not see a public dialogue on this. We didn't see what Pam versus Mr. Day versus, Mr. Allworth thinks, and that's required in the law. Not everything can be heard in executive session. There are limits. There are 9 things that can be discussed in executive session and decisions made about those topic general areas. The rest has to happen in public. And we hear you guys talking about how we talked about this together. We talked about this in the back room. We did all that. Can't happen unless it's directly tied to those 9 things. And there's clearly many, many things that you come out and say that we agreed on this, or we're a united front on that. And we're not seeing the sausage being made, for lack of a better terminology. So resolution number 12, none of those policies, whether revised or new or updated, we need to see the old one and the new one, or whatever the new one is, ahead of the meeting. Or that's not notice. That's not public notice. 13, resolution 13, we're talking about revising policies again. These policies are not online. Let's see what else. And I guess I would like to also just specifically, changes were made about like length of time and how meetings are going to be held and all that. When was that public notice and public meeting held to discuss those things? So generally, I appreciate what Mr. Day has said. If you want public involvement and public participation, to limit the time that we're allowed to talk, to limit the technology based on, I don't even know why. I don't even know how you made that decision, because it wasn't in a public forum. And So you're limiting how we can see this and how much time we can spend on this. And at the same time, you're talking about wanting the public to be involved. Those things don't make sense to us. I'm telling you, most of these people are like, it seems like they don't want to hear from us. If you're changing a policy and you want feedback, you got to give us a heads up so we can absorb it, understand it, and make a public comment. So that's what I have to say. I think a lot of people are going to have more specifics about, but tonight there's 5 things on here that we did not get noticed.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, I just have a question. So when we have, in the documents that get uploaded. Oh, am I muted? In the documents that get uploaded, it has the individual committee agendas, correct?
That's
So
correct.
on those individual committee agendas, the public is able to see those as well.
Yes.
And they have hyperlinks in them to all the policies with the changes, correct?
Yes, I include the alerts from Strauss Esme. To answer your question, I include all the alerts from Strauss Esme. That's a company that we use. I would say.
Where can I find it? Can you give me a specific, like where can I find the new policies on public participation in meetings? Because I haven't seen that anywhere.
It should be listed. I submit it to one of our administrative assistants.
It's not there. The policy on
Yeah,
dress
so,
code.
Okay.
so we'll look
What
at
is
that
the
and
dress
get back
code
to you
thing?
on that.
You guys didn't talk about a dress code change, but it's in here. We don't even know what that's about.
We're just gonna go into public comments and move on.
What is that?
Yep.
That's not.
So we
public
have a
notice.
new speaker at the podium. We need your name and address, please.
David Fresky, 28 Hillside Avenue. Just wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Dionisio on his new opportunity and thank him for all of the accomplishments and his leadership and persistence in our district. Really appreciate it. You've made a big difference, and I'm sure these changes will carry on for years going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Waka, and I still live on 85 Linwood Road. I want to start by saying I think it's a very wise decision that this board is making to use a search firm to find the next superintendent. I've seen some boards try and do this on their own, and it's just such an extensive and exhaustive process. So I think it's very wise you're doing that. I could speak from personal experience. I've been through every stage of a NJSBA superintendent search process. And everything that they say they're going to do on their package, they will do. It's also important to note too that the field rep that was giving that presentation before, she's not given a sales pitch. She doesn't make a dime extra for selling you this particular services. Other services will, work out a commission for the people that get that. But the reason that's important is that when you ask her a question about the process, you're going to get an honest answer. There's no extra fiscal, motivation for her to try and sell you on something that she won't be able to deliver. In juxtaposition, I noticed that, there was talk about the lowest score that you guys had for the self-evaluation might have been the planning. Because the field reps don't always
Excuse me, Mr. Walker.
Go ahead.
Are you commenting on any action items? Because this is for action items only right now.
Well, the presentation, wasn't that the superintendent search presentation? Wasn't that one of the agenda
We're
items?
not taking any action on that.
Okay, can I keep going?
Hmm?
I'll be real quick. But I think what's interesting to know, if you do want to have a higher score, at least a better plan or process for your board's planning, the NJSBA does offer a 3D strategic planning model. It's only about $5,000 and it's 3 sessions that you'll have for about 2 hours each. So I would strongly recommend you consider that. Thank you. And I apologize for talking about something out of order.
Thank you.
Glenn Elliott, 35 Brentwood Drive, Verona. Hello, everyone. Quick note that this is the first Board of Education meeting I've made as a private citizen since 2003. So it's not that I necessarily want to come out this evening, but I did want to come out to address the important agenda item that you're accepting the resignation of Dr. Dionisio. It's important because of the service that Dr. Dionisio has given to the community and to the school district and to all the people of Verona. As a board member, I've worked with every superintendent since Dr. Kim and every interim superintendent since Dr. Kim, and it feels like it's been many, and I guess it has, but certainly Dr. Dionisio's tenure here has been amongst the longest and probably among the most productive. Rui, I've worked with, of all the people I've worked with, you're most certainly amongst the best, maybe the best, but there's always room for growth, and I don't want anything to go to your head this evening. But certainly it was a pleasure working with you, and I just wanted to take this moment to thank you for your service and to wish you well in your next position and let you know you will be missed.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you very much.
I can't see. Good evening. My name is Joanna Breitenbach, 14 Woodland Avenue. I also wanted to come out this evening. Haven't been to a Board of Ed meeting in a while. I wanted to take this opportunity also to congratulate Dr. Dionisio on his new venture. I also wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to you for everything that you've done for this district. It is because of your dedication to the progress and success of the students in this district that we are in the position that we're at. You have elevated the visibility of Verona, and I have to say that the graduating class of 2021 is a testament to that. The number of kids who graduated this year who are going to Ivies, who would none otherwise have been recruited. We graduated out of 194 students this year. 112 of those kids graduated with high honors. And I thank you for allowing those kids who would not otherwise have thought about or considered challenging themselves and providing those opportunities for them to challenge themselves academically. And I thank you for that, because in typical districts, those opportunities are only allotted to a select few. At least when I was going to high school, that's the way it was. So I thank you for that. We haven't always seen eye to eye, as many people may think that would be the case, but we haven't always seen eye to eye. There are times that I brought something to you and you said, yes, let's do it, like the sound panels that we installed at Lanning Avenue School in the multipurpose room, and I thank you for that. To the rejection of fundraising ideas that I had because they didn't make sense, but Jello wrestling comes to mind. But I always appreciate your willingness to listen and to provide feedback. And for that, I will always be thankful for your collaboration and your constant consideration. So Ramapo's gain is Verona's loss. Thank you for all that you've done for us.
Are there any other comments on agenda items?
Hi, Dana DeMars, 8 Witherspoon Road. I guess this is kind of directed toward Mr. O'Brien because it has to do with the air conditioning and ventilation and all that kind of stuff. You said that the ventilation was done on time and as expected, which was 8/31, which is today. What was the original completion date for the air conditioning and the heat? If it wasn't today, is there a date that you originally told?
Yeah.
I guess the board and everyone else when it was going to get done.
This is for action items. We're not taking any action on that. So you could save that for public comment at the end.
Okay.
All right, I got off of Zoom again. Give me 1 second.
Virginia Sotrano, 68 Newman Avenue, Verona. I'm commenting on item number 3. 5 years ago tomorrow, my family was hit with a devastating tragedy. My younger son died by suicide. One of the first people to arrive at my house that morning was Dr. Dionisio. I didn't know him very well then. And he said to me, "What can I do?" I said that I needed him to do something in the district to make sure that this tragedy never happened to another Verona family. Rui pulled together 2 action groups, one to study school culture and one to look at how the district addressed mental health. In the last 5 years, I have come to see how remarkable that was. I've been a volunteer with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I've seen in most school districts that the district tries hard, very hard, to avoid speaking about suicide, whether that is to prevent it or to comfort the grieving. But Rui didn't stop at just investigating the problem. His team looked at what was working in the district and what wasn't, and he empowered them to make changes, from a zero tolerance policy on bullies to drafting a budget supplement, a budget question to fund mental health services across all grades that was overwhelmingly approved by the community. Rui, what you did to change school culture and improve mental health here isn't completed, and it never will be. We as a community have to carry on the work that you set in motion. But I am very thankful that you took the challenge head on and that you accomplished what you did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments on agenda resolution items? If not, we are going to close this session and continue on with our agenda. Next on the agenda is open discussion items for the board. If there's any new or old business that needs to be discussed. Does anybody have anything? No. So we are going to move on to resolutions. I need a motion to accept approval of resolutions number 1 through 31. Moved by Mr. Day.
Second.
I'm going to give it to Mrs. Drappi. Second by Mrs. Drappi. And is there any discussion on any agenda items from the board? I'm going to take a moment here to read a statement again in regard to resolution number 3, which is the board's accepting Dr. Dionisio's resignation. Over the course of the last 7 years, Dr. Dionisio has administered to our schools with great passion and tireless dedication. Under his leadership, Verona Public Schools has thrived. We've documented increased student participation in various levels of coursework, emphasized critical thinking, and enhanced college readiness, which led to Verona High School's ranking of 24th in the top 100 schools in the state, according to New Jersey Monthly Magazine. Verona also gained national recognition for academic achievements by U.S. News and the College Board. Dr. Dionisio successfully navigated 2 referendums totaling over $43 million of upgrades and renovations, bringing our facilities into the 21st century. He implemented the house model at our middle school and made available training for our elementary teachers in the Orton-Gillingham method. He was selected as Superintendent of the Year by his peers in Essex County. The list goes on, but I think you get the idea. While it's not always obvious to the public, the Board of Education only has 1 employee, and that is the superintendent. Every other staff member in the district is vetted and recommended for hire by the superintendent. We're extremely fortunate that Dr. Dionisio has recommended many excellent teachers and administrators over the years. While the board is saddened to see him leave Verona, we're very confident that our schools remain in very, very capable hands. Dr. Dionisio, the board really genuinely wishes you well on your career path, and we're certain that you're going to do great things in your new district. So over the coming weeks and months, the board will be conducting a search for a new superintendent in accordance with our policy 1220, the employment of the chief school administrator. To afford the district time to find the best replacement, the board will begin interviewing candidates for the interim superintendent of schools, who will manage the day-to-day affairs of the district until a permanent placement is identified. And with that, I am going to ask Mr. Cruz to please do the roll call for resolutions.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Allworth,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco.
Yes.
Motion passed. We have quorum.
Thank you. And there is a couple addendum resolutions. I need a motion to accept addenda resolutions number 1 through 3.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Drappi. Second by Mr. Day. And is there any discussion? No. And then, Mr. Cruz, can you please do the roll call?
Sure. Mr. Allworth,
Yes.
Mr. Day, Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco.
Yes.
We have quorum. Motion passed.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And at this point, we will open the floor again to public comments on any item. And we're starting this portion at 8:50. And how much time do we have? So we have 45 minutes left for public comment on open items.
Hello, my name is Laura Giasone, 100 Linden Avenue. Please note that my legal name and the name that I introduce myself at board meetings is Laura Giasone. The board minutes note that my name is Laura Gottlieb. Gottlieb is my husband's last name, not mine. I'm going to be reading a letter from another Verona resident, Elizabeth Zalm, Z-A-L-M-E, 34 Personette Avenue. I could not be present tonight to speak in person. I have no one to take care of my children as my husband works second shift. I know that I'm not alone in this situation. It's one of a plethora of reasons why Zoom meetings are so crucial to having an informed public, but that is not why I want to address the board. I write tonight as both a mom of a rising second grader, but also as a public health official. I've worked in public health for the last 16 years. These past 18 plus months have really tested us. I was forced to put my regular work aside to do contact tracing, interpret guidance from both the CDC and NJSBA, help businesses, restaurants, and schools, both public and private, implement COVID mitigation measures. I'm telling you this so that you can understand my background. When I read the email that came out last week, something stood out to me: the use of plexi partitions during lunch for elementary school kids. There was no mention of outdoor lunch for elementary, which is the easiest and safest way to handle lunch. Why can't the high school and middle school children have outdoor lunch, but the elementary kids can? The use of plexi partitions is nothing but hygiene theater. Recently, it has been the subject of a few studies. These studies are showing, including one conducted by the highly respected Johns Hopkins on partition used in schools in Massachusetts, that plastic barriers actually can make a COVID situation worse. It's partially the reason the state took away the plexi recommendation from NJDOH guidance. Studies show that plexi partitions can actually impede airflow in a room. They give a false sense of security. They can cause dead pockets of air in a room where COVID can be in a higher concentration. They need to be cleaned regularly. They are pointless. Maskless with or without plexi is still going to require quarantine of close contacts. The plexi makes no difference. So why are we using plexi? Some open windows with some fans or functional HVAC would be more effective. My final thought is that I hope you're working with the Montclair Health Department to help solve these issues. I saw no mention of them in your email. Believe me, I understand these are complex issues. Montclair receives Verona tax dollars to be our health authority. They need to provide the service we pay for. We should be using their expertise, not just for contact tracing, but for problem solving and navigating these complex issues. This is what health departments are required to do. We also have an open line to the NJDOH and are able to get answers districts may not be able to. I'm hoping this is already happening. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time as a resource. Thank you for your time. Again, her name is Elizabeth Zalme, Z-A-L-M-E. Thank you.
Excuse me, do you think that we could have a copy of the statement?
Yeah, I will email it to you.
All right, great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Denise Verzella, 130 Personette Avenue. The Open Public Meeting Act, or Sunshine Law, reads as follows. The legislature finds and declares that the right of the public to be present at all meeting of public bodies and to witness in full detail all phases of the deliberation, policy formation, and decision-making of public bodies is vital to the enhancement and proper functioning of the democratic process. That secrecy in public affairs undermines the faith of the public in government and the public's effectiveness in fulfilling its role in a democratic society. And hereby declares it to be the public policy of this state to ensure the right of its citizens to have adequate advance notice of and the right to attend all meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting the public is discussed or acted upon in any way, except only in those circumstances where otherwise the public interest would clearly be endangered or personal privacy or guaranteed rights of individuals would be clearly in danger of unwarranted invasion. There are 9 legal exemptions to when sessions may be closed to the public. Those are matters made confidential by state, federal law, or rule of court. Disclosure would result in unwarranted invasion of individual privacy unless the person affected consents in writing. Disclosure would impair the body's right to receive federal or state funds. Collective bargaining, lease or acquisition of property, setting of banking rates, investment of public funds if disclosure would harm the public interest. Investigations into violations of law, strategies to protect public security, pending, ongoing, or anticipated litigation or contract negotiation, including attorney-client privilege. The threat of litigation must be more than theoretical for this exemption to apply. Personnel matters affecting employees of the public bodies, unless all parties request or consent to a public hearing. Prior to discussion of personnel, affected employees must be given notice, known as a Rice notice, which gives the employee the right to request a public hearing. Proceedings that could result in the suspension, civil penalty, or loss of license or permit. The board has habitually held closed confidential sessions to discuss matters that do not meet any of the 9 legal exemptions. The most recent example involves a letter sent to members of the board from the child board advocating for Zoom meetings to allow the disabled community to fully participate in board meetings. In response, a board member emailed back that it would be discussed in confidential session. It should not be discussed in confidential session, but here, in the board meeting, in public. Another board member in an open letter to the community stated, "We have discussions in closed sessions where we do discuss and disagree on many items throughout the year. What is presented at meetings has been discussed as a whole prior." In addition to public discussions, comprehensive minutes of closed session must be taken and released promptly after the necessity of the closed session has passed. A review of minutes released on the Board of Ed website since 2014 has resulted in the finding of no minutes of closed sessions ever being released, unless they're released in 2015, because those minutes still are not on the board website. To paraphrase Lin-Manuel Miranda, the public is entitled to be in the room where the sausage is made. Open means open. One last thing, I would like to know the name and email address of the Oprah officer. Or the custodian records. Thank you. Do you want to address?
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Donahue, 31 South Prospect Street. In reference to the email that Ms. Rosella just spoke about, I would like to read the email that our child board sent to the Board of Education on August 23rd. Dear Verona Board of Education members, we are writing to you today as concerned board members of Verona Special Education Parent Advisory Committee Child, which stands for Children Having Individual Learning Differences. Over the course of the 2020-2021 school year, the board followed the New Jersey Department of Education mandates and conducted board meetings via Zoom. Now that providing the service is no longer mandated, the board has decided to hold in-person meetings only. We strongly implore you to reconsider your decision for the following important reasons. The Zoom option allowed for increased participation and engagement, especially among parents in the child community, who, due to their child's unique needs, often face a variety of barriers that make attendance at evening meetings difficult. Additionally, Zoom provided accessibility for our disabled community members, including those with physical, sensory, intellectual, or psychosocial impairments. It also allowed those who are immunocompromised or who have family members who are immunocompromised to attend and participate in the meeting safely during this continued pandemic. According to the Americans with Disabilities Act, reasonable accommodation includes adjustments to assure that an individual with a disability has rights and privileges equal to those of individuals without disabilities. Cedar Grove, Montclair, Livingston, and several other nearby towns all offer the Zoom option for their Board of Ed meetings. Our town council has also been conducting its meetings using the remote option. The New Jersey County School Boards Association even allows its members to attend meetings both in person and virtually. If you, as Verona board members, now have this option for county meetings, our community members deserve the same. The board has been asked why the Zoom hybrid meetings cannot continue as they've been allowed for greater access for everyone in the community. To date, the only explanation has been because that is what the board has decided. This is not in the letter, but today Mr. Day said, and this is the only reason given to date, that he likes being in person, which is great for him, but not for the rest of the community necessarily. As disability activist Rachel Olivero said, inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making a new space, a better space for everyone. The COVID pandemic has been difficult for us all, but especially the disabled community. One of the bright spots has been greater accessibility for public meetings because of the utilization of technology. To take away this accessibility now would punish those who, because of who they are, not choices they have made, are unable to attend in-person meetings. For the many reasons we've highlighted, we ask that the remote option be immediately reinstated. This is your chance to make a better space for everyone. Sincerely, child board members, Kristen Donahue, Jeananne Drost, Karen Eibold, Siobhan Meyer, Susan Nogales, Dawn Sconzo, and Denise Rosella. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for reading the letter aloud.
Good evening, Jeremy Katz at 81 Forest Avenue. I was going to make comments very similar in line to the last statement, so I will try not to repeat because it was actually a very comprehensive statement. I myself work in a client-facing environment and can certainly understand the importance of in-person meetings. However, your comment this evening came off completely tone-deaf to reality, completely tone-deaf to reality. There are many reasons which were just covered why we should have a Zoom meeting. You're the only municipal governing body in Verona currently that does not have a Zoom option. In fact, tonight the council had a Zoom meeting because of the special board meeting. It was very efficient. There's really no other reason to have it. I have an unvaccinated 5-year-old child at home, and I'm here, and I shouldn't have to be here. I shouldn't have to take unneeded rest to come here for a meeting. No one else should. I go into work once a week in the city, and I'm talking to my CEO about paring that back until Delta comes down. It's just really unacceptable. The technology is all here. In fact, we had plenty of issues this evening right from the jump. People couldn't hear, it was echoing, people were on mute, people unmute. It makes it so much more seamless and frictionless to have a Zoom option. So people who have childcare issues, unvaccinated children, immunocompromised folks, folks who have other plans and issues that want to watch this at home or other convenient environment for them, to be able to do so. The fact of the matter is, bringing food here is not going to get more people to come. Looking at the minutes over the past 9 months, for the first 5 months of the year when everything was virtual, your average attendance rate was almost 100 people. Since it's been live, the average attendance rate has been 15 people. There's only 18 people here tonight. That's not acceptable for a community with 13,000 residents in it. So I would urge you to really re-look at doing hybrid, because there's no other reason to do it just because your comment is, I like being here. I like traveling around the world and seeing clients too. I can't do that. I'm up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock most days of the week talking to people on the other side of the world. I'd rather get my sleep. I'd rather see them in person. Very helpful. Currently, we can't do it. We don't need to take unnecessary risks to hold these types of meetings. So again, please reconsider having some sort of hybrid option going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Sorry about that before. I'm back. Dana DeMars, 8 Witherspoon Road. So same question about, you said the ventilation was supposed to be completed, expected to be completed on 8/31, and it is. When was the original completion date for the air conditioning and heating? If you had a date for 8/31, we would assume that there was a date for the air conditioning too. We were not told that. I'm not sure if the board was. We were just wondering if there is a date. We did receive an email from the superintendent dated July 6th, 2022. Yes, you heard me. It said 2022. The date was wrong. And it said that school was going to be pushed. Did I say July 6th, 2022? So I'm not sure I said it right. That school was going to be pushed back until the 9th so that the ventilation, heating, and air conditioning would be completed. So the question is, when will it be complete? Do you know? When was the original date? Going to what Mr. Roberts said about masks and the exemptions of when they have to be worn, which was excessive heat. What would be considered excessive heat? We go back to school in a few weeks, it could be 90 something degrees in a classroom. Is that considered excessive heat where kids will be able to remove masks, have mask breaks, things of that sort? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't need to speak it if you guys want to answer her questions.
Nope, we're going to address it at the end.
Okay. It's Mike Dupree, 47 Cypress Avenue. Good evening. No need to belabor the Zoom piece. It's going to keep coming up until it's probably changed. I think just the dichotomy of the eagerness to engage with the community while also limiting accessibility just doesn't quite add up. I think if you think about things we've learned since the pandemic started, everything went remote. Some things worked really well and were more efficient going remote. Many companies are still remote. I would argue that public hearings like this, public forums like this, garnered more engagement and attention during that time period. I think those things worked. School didn't work quite as well. And I think we're learning from those experiences. And I think it's important to continue to evaluate that. So I certainly hope you do. As you know, I think the public sentiment for it will only increase. It's not why I came up. I wanted to comment on the presentation from the Boards Association. Mr. Walken made an assumption. I just want to get clarification if I can. He said that it's a good decision that you're hiring a search firm. I didn't get that you actually had made that decision yet. So I want to offer the board a chance to clarify. Are you going to, use a search firm, use the Board Association, or conduct your own? Or if you haven't made that decision yet, I think it would be helpful to understand that. I would like to also ask in that same vein on the very, very important superintendent search. Do you plan to share updates with like reasonable frequency on the milestones that you'll be hitting with the public during that process, and also key decisions like, are you using a search firm, what have you. So I'd love to hear what your plans are in terms of just the transparency throughout that process with the public. And then the final point on that is the representative from the Boards Association said something really important, which is in her presentation, which is it's critical to gather feedback from all relevant stakeholders, whether it's staff, union, public, and obviously the board and the community. So I would be curious to hear, and if not today, in the future, what methods of input gathering and data gathering do you plan to take in your search process to get that very important input from the community in particular, which is what we're curious about, but also the other stakeholders that she represented and spoke about. So that's all I have. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. I will speak briefly on the search process. We have not decided definitively to use a search firm yet. We have gotten proposals from search firms that we will be evaluating, and that seems to be the most logical way to go, to have that assistance. I agree with Mr. Waka, and the board has we've had individual conversations around that. As far as the interim, we did advertise for that. We had a very good response to that. We had, I believe it was 13 or 14 applicants. Uh-oh. Something going on back there. And we selected from the applicant pool the top 5. Each board member evaluated independently the full application, letters of recommendation, resumes, their whole body of work. And we created a rubric, and I straw polled the individual board members, and we came up with the top 5. And the interim interviews are going to begin next week on September 9th. So hopefully we will have a candidate out of that. And yes, we'll be updating the public as we go along to the extent that we're able to. Again, to Ms. Peterson's presentation, a lot of that is sensitive information, and people interviewing probably already hold jobs. So there's going to be very limited what we'll put out. But as far as the applicant pool and where we are in the process. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. God bless you.
Chris Walk again, 85 Linwood. I know that this board in the past, when confronted with an important task, has brought in community members that have had expertise in the related field to help out. Specifically, the board president had her husband help out with an important task of contract negotiations. With this important task of superintendent search, I'd like to volunteer, my services as uniquely qualified to help out with this process to this board in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Ron Mueller, 21 Linden Avenue, Verona, New Jersey. First, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Dionisio for your service. As you move on to your next challenges, I'll say. Heard a lot of comments from a lot of people today that also echoed that, but I also agree with a lot of else that was said today. The only thing I have is really a comment for the board, especially as we move forward with these meetings. I noticed that certain comments were cut short because they weren't comments on action items. Other comments were allowed to continue. So just be cognizant of that, I think, as you move forward, especially as you're pertaining to discussion items that you had around community outreach and community involvement. Just maintain the level playing field there is what I would say. So don't shut people down that are comments that maybe you've heard a lot of times because they're bringing them up over and over again, while other comments that are more positive seem to go on. That's the only thing I would say, but thank you guys for your support and appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments?
All right, Dana Morris, 8 Witherspoon Road again. Just to clarify, I just didn't know if I heard you or not correctly. For the process for the interim superintendent, it's just the Board of Ed? that is doing the,
For the first round interviews.
and then after that, it goes,
We'll
does the
see how the
superintendent
first round
have a
interviews
say in
go.
that? Does he see that?
I'm sorry?
Does the superintendent is he part of the process of vetting the new intern
He
superintendent?
can be. At this point, he is not. It's going to be strictly the board for the first round interviews.
But then farther on, he could be.
He could be. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more quick comment. Denise Frizella, 130 Personette Avenue. The board voted on a bunch of resolutions. I think I counted 34 different resolutions tonight. I might be a little bit off on that. And I think Dr. Miller said that they would be available via a link on the agendas or on the committee reports on the board website. I'm looking at the board website on the education committee. There are no links here. So you all just voted on resolutions without discussing in public, including things like dress code, which I personally am interested in because I think most dress codes are sexist and racist and should be abolished. So yeah, I just want to make sure that's very clear that whatever process you're using to put these documents up or to put links up to these documents is not happening correctly. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Latson, 9 Wilton Terrace. I was wondering in reference to the interim superintendent search, Mrs. Freshy, you mentioned the interviews are going to begin, I think you said next week.
Correct.
I was wondering if you have a sense of how long the interim period will be. In other words, how long will that person serve? And is your expectation that you'll run another search for a permanent super? Or is your expectation that the interim might become the permanent super?
So
I'm not
those
sure
are
if that's
great
something you can
questions.
answer.
As far as how long the interim will serve, we don't know. And I think it speaks to Ms. Peterson's presentation where we want an interim who is going to be here for as long as we need. We don't want it to be a rush process. And as she explained, the advertising alone might take up to a month. Anybody applying might have a 2 month to 3 month clause. So we really don't have a timeline. We're being very optimistic that it might be before next July 1st, but having somebody, an interim in for the full school year might make more sense and have a start date. So that's one of the things we're going to go back into executive session and talk about personnel options and how we're going to handle that.
Okay, thank you. I also had, on a different note, a question about remote learning or the possibility of remote learning for this school year. There was a reference in the letter from last week that there's no remote learning option for students who have a general illness. I'm wondering how we define general illness. If my child is sick with GI symptoms, for example, which happened during this past school year, that could be a general illness or it could be a symptom of COVID. Same goes for a fever, same goes for a cough. I'm one of those parents who has always kept my kid home if they're sick, at least for a day, you know. But with COVID, if I take my child to get a PCR test, I don't get the results right away. We may be waiting 2 or 3 days. So what does that mean for them with school? Do they operate under the assumption that they just have a general illness? Or if we're testing for COVID, do we operate under the assumption that that's a possibility and they're eligible for remote learning? I'm asking this as a parent of one fully vaxxed child and one who isn't eligible yet. So it's something that I'm concerned about, especially because I've got someone going into high school and he's not going to want to miss any school. And I've got someone going into 6th grade who had a really tough 5th grade year and he's not going to want to miss any school either. So if you could clarify that policy, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to speak to that? Or?
We're done with all public comment.
Okay. Dr. Dionisio will address that at the end of public comment portion. Are there any other comments from the public at this point?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Are there any other comments, public comments at this point? Because if not, I'm going to close the portion. All right, I am going, it doesn't look like anybody else is coming up to the podium, so it's 9:18 and we're going to officially close public comment portion. And Dr. Dionisio will comment and
I just
answer
want to
some of those
say,
questions.
I, Denise Brazella, am a resident. I protest the closing of the meeting. I ask that you reconsider your intent to discuss matters in closed session that should not be discussed in closed session. And I further ask that this protest be recorded in the official minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to address some of those?
Yes. So I've been taking some notes. So just to provide some clarification based on some of the public comments and questions that were presented by people at the podium. So in regards to the school reopening plan based on the road forward, we do consult, as we did this time as well, with the Montclair Health Department and our district physician on our plan that was put forward in order to start the new school year based on the public health guidance and the recommendations that came forward from the Department of Education, as well as the governor's executive orders. The new ventilation system is operational. So this is addressing some general comments that were made this evening and questions around eating lunch when it's inside in the classrooms based on inclement weather. The elementary schools will try to have lunch outdoors as frequently as possible. When that's not possible, they will do that indoors. We do have an upgraded ventilation system that's 100% operational. We have windows that will be open, and we're implementing all mitigation strategies. In relation to the excessive heat comment, we will be monitoring it as we did last year and making adjustments. That will depend on the conditions day to day. It is hard to delineate a certain temperature because there are a lot of factors that go into the conditions in the classroom, specifically humidity and the location of the room and what the conditions in that specific room are throughout the building. So we will be working very closely with our facilities department, with our building principals and administration, as well as our teaching staff, and mask breaks will be provided accordingly, and exceptions will be made when heat is determined to be excessive. Remote learning option is not going to be something that will be utilized this year unless it's a medically verified COVID condition. It does need to be medically verified, and that's when a remote learning option will be possible. And we will have, we have those processes that will be in place to make sure that students who have to remain home for COVID will be able to access remote learning, and that will be coordinated between the teachers and the principals at each school. And then the last bit that was requested and asked about for more clarification is around the specific referendum projects. I'm going to call Mr. O'Brien to come on up and just provide some clarity to the extent that you can regarding the HVAC question that was brought.
So to clarify your question in regards to how we identify the ventilation to be on 831 and what are their components. So HVAC, the project, right, it involves heating, ventilation, and AC, and that's how it's typically referred to in general. The ventilation portion was put forth as the most important due to the COVID and what we needed to get done. The project, the high school last year, we ran into material issues and all those aspects with COVID and the factory's not able to produce it. And we kind of anticipated that with this project this year. And in doing so, that's why we had that meeting in December that we were anticipating completion in the summer. And then we had another meeting in January. During that time, we were negotiating with the contractor who did, come down as far as their pricing at the original quote that they had. In doing so, we put forward the ventilation as a substantial completion to go inside with COVID. The AC and the heating part is part of the whole entire project, but we put that sort of at the back burner of where we have to hit that, again, because of the COVID. It's hard to us at that point in January to establish a completion date based on we didn't have any delivery dates from the factories for the equipment. We didn't know how we were going to be able to get into schools with school still going on. School ended in June, I think June 28th, give or take a day, which left us about, call it 4 to 9 weeks to get ventilation operable. The project size was about 5 times the size of the high school, which we started in May and didn't finish till, I would say, maybe October, November, as far as that. So if we went just on that in 5 times, it's very hard to project that completion. I will say, based on the contract for the ECC, it is not beneficial for them to drag this out because they're not getting additional costs for second shift, working on Saturdays. It was to get as much done now in the summer, first shift, and they actually worked like 48 hours. They worked, 4 10s and then 8-hour shift to try to get as much done. I would have liked to have delivered an AC project. So I know it's beneficial with the masks on for the kids that have the AC, but it's just the volume of the project was very difficult for us to get all that done in today. So we are pushing forward, like we're going to work second shift once school starts the 9th, and we're going to keep pushing. So I wish I could give you more and a better answer that you're looking for, but I'm not going to give you something I can't actually tell you.
Probably not on you, it's that we were never communicated the ventilation part was going to be the priority, needs to be done first. We're told it was the whole thing, and it maybe we had heard and known the transparency of what was going on from day one, that the ventilation was put, I have no complaints about that. It's just, we didn't know that. And that's not on you.
No, and it's fine. I'm part of the project, so it's part of my role to be here for the school and in this project. So, but it's starting in March when we had a better understanding when material and when we can start getting into the school, because through the school year we couldn't rip out those existing univents because it was giving ventilation. So we had to wait until June 28th, June 29th. So on March 5th, that Friday, I started putting on that weekly update that gets put out. The bottom, it did say the ventilation would be on for the 31st. I apologize if there was other questions that just didn't get my way. I would have, been a little bit more clear to the public, but that's what I thought was sufficient to allow you to know the 31st was going to be ventilation.
Do we have time frame at like months, weeks, like how long for the AC? I'm not going to stick to a deadline, but I was wondering, it's hard to tell based on what you said, what we're talking about. Is this months away from being done or weeks or?
We are trying to get this, wrapped up. I mean, for the AC portion, outside going into an Indian summer, we're October 90 degrees. I don't know if we'll have portions done as far as 100% done, every single inch having AC by the time it's needed or by the time it's not needed with the heat, with, colder weather and needing the heat. I don't know if we'll hit that mark as far as saying like October 1st, October 15th. I can't give a definitive on that because when we go second shift and a full capacity, full day of school, we didn't have that last year. We had half days. We were able to get more people and more time. When we start going into these other schools, I have to be able to clean up at the end of the night with the staff from the facilities to make sure the kids can get in there the next day and it's clean and it's safe. So it's, we can't have full crew like we have now in the summer going second shift because it's just not able to keep it clean for the next day. So if I can get, as soon as I can get an idea,
That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
I'll relate that to the school board.
No, thanks for your clarity.
Everything's good?
Dr. Dionisio, can I just have clarification on the statement you were talking about with virtual school and having COVID and things like that? If a student has to quarantine because of exposure but doesn't have COVID, are they eligible for virtual learning? And if it looks like the policy still has restrictions on travel, so if an unvaccinated student travels, do they have eligibility for homeschool learning?
So the question around that, the first part of that question is in relation to whether or not students who have exposure, and we're going to continue to consult with our district physician, with the Montclair Health Department, but the CDC has made an exception for students as far as having to quarantine for close contacts as long as they continue to have their masks on, properly worn, and a minimum of 3 feet. So there's guidance around that we are going to be following, and we ran that through the health department. So we do anticipate that there's going to be a significant reduction in the number of students who will be quarantining this year, thereby requiring less of the hybrid remote learning for those students. In instances where those situations do happen to pop up, and of course they may, because there may be times when students do not have masks on, and in consultation with the health department, it may be determined that they should quarantine, then that would be something that's COVID medically verified. That would be done through our nursing department, and the protocols and the guidance and the direction would come from our medical professionals, and they would give us that direction, and that coordination of the remote learning would happen with our students, between the teachers, the principals, and with the families specifically. Along your second question in regards to travel, there will not be any option for students who are eligible to be vaccinated, who do travel and have to quarantine. There will be no remote learning option for those students if they are eligible to receive a vaccine. If there are instances where students have to travel and then there's a quarantine that is being recommended, the parents should contact their building principal and school nurse in advance to discuss what those concerns would be, and to have the school-based medical team determine whether or not there will be a remote learning option provided.
Okay, and let me just see where we're at. I lost my place. We're done. All right, so at this point, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. We are going to retire back into executive session, and no action will be taken on any items discussed there tonight. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Drappi. Second by Mr. Day. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And the next public meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 14th, confidential session beginning at 5:30 with public session at 7 p.m. Thank you very much and have a good night and a successful start to the school year.